Hello everyone, a very good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all. Myself Vaibhav. In today's session of automated trading, we are continuing our work with these indicators, the TRIX and TSF. This is the second part of ongoing series and today we will try to build on the yesterday's initial setup in which we have gotten most of the indicator blocks and today we will try to define the buy and the sell condition. This is the technical description for the TRIX and the TSF, the time series forecast. Before we get started, here is a standard disclaimer. Here, I would again like to remind that this session is simply for the tutorial purpose and no claim is being made regarding the profitability or otherwise of the algorithms which we will be developing during the session. Suppose if you want to use any of it, I would recommend that you do extensive testing before utilizing and also allow it to run on the demo account for good enough time. And of course, nothing in the webinar is to be constructed as an advice to trade or for any particular trading setup. On that note, we get started for the day. First, we will consider what we are trying to achieve in our setup. So, first thing first, we are basically concerned with the tricks direction. Here, we are counting on both the magnitude as well as the rate of change and the direction of the change. If the values are falling and if the values are in negative territory, then we look for a sell trade. If the tricks values are rising and tricks values are in positive territory, we look for a buy trade. Then the shift of attention is on the TSF side. Then if the TRIX conditions are in place, the next question is about the requirement on the TSF side, and here if suppose the buy requirements are in place, then we want to make sure that there has been some correction and consolidation, and then as and when the new momentum picks in, we want to get involved for the new trade. So suppose here let us assume it is actually the TRIX values are falling, so the conditions won't be fulfilled, but let us for the moment maybe here we can assume that buy conditions are in place, and as and when we see the TSF value starts to rise beyond this TSF line, the linear regression series, then we want to get involved for a long trade, and we also are considering the prior candles closing level, so we will need the prior three candles just before the last candle to have closed in the territory which is below this TSF series, this line. So we will be comparing this, and then if and when this candle close happens for last 1 hour, then immediately after that in the next hour, as and when the value again starts to rise above this TSF line, we will go in for a buy trade. And for the sell trade, here the TSF values, let us these are in positive territory, so uh, we will need to look for a different example here, and maybe somewhere here. Even yesterday we had considered this, so I hope you remember the point pretty well, and prior three candles should have closed in the region above this line, and then the last candle should close below the line, and the next candle it should go on to touch this line, and then we will go in for a market open, and our stop loss and target is going to be in multiple of the hourly ATR. So let us go on the chart to see what we have done so far. We have done instrument subscription for the Euro USD. The default instrument is defined as Euro USD. The position amount has been defined at 0. We got these TRIX values with shift 1 and shift 2 to do the comparison and determine the direction of the trend. Then we got this TSF series here. These are with look back periods defined from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we got this historical candle data again defined for the look back period of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we got historical data for 1 minute candle as well to simply determine the entry and exit. Then we brought in the ATR for stop loss and the target purpose. to define those range, those pips where we want to place our stop loss and target. Now, as we are adding the precise entry point, we will need the current hours TSF value as well, and we will then do the comparison with the help of 1 minute candle close, and then we will go in for a market open. So let us bring in the TSF series, TSF block, and the TSF is part of mathematical, yes. So we take in the TSF, and then we will need to do a lot of calculations. So here comes the current hours shift will be defined at 0 only, no changes there, and that will give us these are TSF value. So we make this change, we need to make it 1 hour hourly. So here we go, and now we have defined this. Next thing we will need to define is the calculation which we need to do for the stop loss and the target thing. And since we are going in for a market open, we don't need to define the entry point, the pending open order conditions. Maybe we can even try for pending open, maybe on your own, given the fact that we have done many pending open orders. You can even try that way with a particular combination in mind. You can define the entry point lower or higher than the last hour's candle close. If it is lower for a buy, then it will be a limit order. If it is higher, then it will be a stop order. Now coming to the calculation expressions requirement, we take this ATR range here, and what we will do, we will make the ratio of stop loss and target 1:2, and we take in the hourly value here, and the combination will be 100% of the ATR for stop loss and 200% of the ATR for the target price. That way our risk reward ratio will be 1:2. So with that we will need to define this, and here we will need the type conversion factor. So we create a fresh variable TSF, again TCF, type conversion factor, and that will be 10 raised to the power 4, as the euro has 4 decimal points, and we want those pips to be converted in the integer. So we have to multiply it, the ATR range, and this will be our stop loss A1 into A2, and we will put in the result of the calculation after we bring in the market open order. For the time being, we don't put anything here, as these are in double format, and we will need the values in the result of the calculation in integer format. So we will leave it as it is for some time. Now we bring this and here again we will need the line 29, the type conversion factor, and then we will need to multiply it with 2 to make the ratio 1:2, and it will be target by pips, and it will be twice. So here we go a1 into a2 into a3, a1 into a2 into a3, and here also we leave the result of the calculation fill blank for some time, and then later on we will bring in. Now we need to find the logical component for multiple action. Just to as a precaution, we will leave a row empty just in case later on if we want to do optimization, or if we are needing to add some fresh conditions, we will have the space to add the blocks of the indicators or the calculations. Now we will need to define the conditions for the trade execution, so we will now need a lot of if blocks, and first, as is the customary practice, we will build the buy side. It is not required, just I am used to building the buy side first then the sell side, that's it. You can do it either way, first sell side and then the buy side, no, it doesn't make a difference. Now first thing is we are going to need for the buy trade, there's the TRIX 17 and TRIX 18 value should be above 0, and then TRIX 17 should be higher than TRIX 18. So now here we want it to be above 0, so the first input should be greater than the second input, this one also 0. Now is the time to bring in fresh if conditions, and in this if condition we will add the requirement. So here we TRIX should be greater than, so now TRIX 17 greater than 0, TRIX 18 greater than 0, alright, and then TRIX 17 should be greater than TRIX 18, that means the TRIX values are increasing. So here let us do some, yes it is right, we are getting our condition correct, and now TRIX 17 should be greater than TRIX 18, first input greater than second input. Here we go, TRIX conditions have been defined. Now we will need to turn our attention to the TSF and the historical candles closing levels. This is the bare bone structure which is now taking shape, and here we have to arrange these blocks, and then we are ready to roll on the TSF side. We have connected the flow, so we got this color coded now, and it means our algorithm is connected to the start point and the flow is working. Now let us define the conditions for the TSF and the historical candles. So we need the comparison on the hourly basis for last 4 hours data, just prior to the order execution, and to make sure we are well aware of the price action for last couple of hours. So we will need to work on this comparison, and there we are going to need to do comparison for last 4 hours candle closing levels with 4 hours TSF. So first thing is we take this line 19 and then line 20 and then subsequent TSF values. So let us bring in 4 E blocks all at once, and then we try to define it. So here line 19, then comes line 20, then comes 21 and 22. Yes, 21 and 22. So here we have got this TSF data, and now we will need to take into account the last 4 hours candle closing. So here we have got this. Now we need to get the shift 1 to shift 4 data on the closing level. So we look at candle 23, candle 24, candle 25 and candle 26 closing levels, and then we compare it to the respective TSF value with the same look back period. So here we now go to auto created variables, and here we have got this candle 23 levels, and the candle 23 is last hour's candle close, so we want it to have closed higher than the last hour's TSF value. And then subsequent, actually preceding candles, not subsequent, actually preceding candles to the last hour's candle should have closed lower than that. So now is the time to join the dots, and let us take this. Here this should have closed, first input should be greater than second input, and then comes the shift 2 candle 24, which should have closed lower than line 20, which is the TSF value with shift 2. So we take the candle 24's closing level, candle close, and then we define the condition line 21, and then we have to do is compare it with the candle 25's closing level and candle 24's close, that is the close level should have been less. The candle 23 had closed higher than the candle the TSF value 19, line 19. Now this preceding candle should have closed lower, and then comes comes candle 25 is closing, and this candle 25, let me take this candle 25 should have also closed lower than line 21. So now we take another a block here with line 22 data, and here it comes candle 25, and here comes line 21, and it should have first input less than second input, and then we will need candle 26 close, which should have also closed lower than line 22. So here we take candle 26, and this is the closing level, and that needs to be less than the line 22, and line 22 is the TSF value with shift 4. Here it is. So we have got the comparison done for respective historical candles and the TSF values. Now let us take one more if condition here, and then we will join the dots. Now candle 26 close should have been less than, so this is the requirement, and here we have done this comparison fairly well. Now is the time to arrange this, and then we will need to look at the current hours TSF value. So here it now we have got this candle 26 close and line 22's comparison done. To define the exact entry place after the initial requirements are satisfied, we want the trade to happen even during the next hour after this prior candle has closed. Whenever the value comes to the level of TSF again and again, from there on, from those levels, whenever it starts to rise, we want the new order to be placed, and so we will be comparing last 2 minutes closing level, the last minute and the minute prior to that, and we will do the comparison with the TSF value. And last 1 minute candle should close higher than the TSF, whereas the penultimate candle should have closed below the TSF, and that would be the entry point for market open. And then, as we have defined, we will put in the condition, the calculations done here. So we again need to do the comparison for the last 2 minutes data, and for that we are going to need the TSF value line 30 and then the 1 minute candles closing levels. So here we are going to do the comparison, and for that we want the candle 30 sorry, the line 30 level, and then we look at the candle closing for the candle 27 and candle 28. So we take the closing levels, and candle 28 should have closed below line 30, and then candle 27 should close above line 30. So we take this candle 28's close should have been less than first input, less than second input, and the candle 27, which is with the look back period of 1, and that candle should have closed higher. So here we take this candle 27 and now is the time to bring in the open at market trading and open at market. As soon as the conditions are in place, whatever is the market price, our execution will happen. So we want this first input greater than the second input, and the value for this trade amount will be at 0.1 million, whereas the slippage will be 2 pips, and then we will need to get the values for stop loss and the target, for which we have already done the calculation. So we are simply going to put those values where they belong. So here comes these blocks to be set up. Now we have got stop loss and the take profit, and here we define a new variable. Let's name it SL. We are not taking any value here, and it will be the SL will be the result of the calculation. So now we have this in place, and here also we define a fresh variable named TP, and that would be the result of the calculation for this expression block. So here we have defined this stop loss and target in the ratio of 1:2, as TPP has a conversion multiplication factor of 2. So that's it. With this, our buy side is complete. In tomorrow's session, we will build on the sell side, and then we will do the calculation as well. And testing, sorry, not calculation, most of the calculations are done. Now the testing is all that remains after we finish with the cell side. So this is it for today's session, and I will be back in tomorrow's session where we will be working for the cell side setup. Thank you all for joining in. See you tomorrow. Have a fabulous day ahead. Goodbye.